Now we've got all of our settings set up for our Swift file and our HTML. And if you just click Publish, that's exactly what will be created. But we can also create some other formats as well. So let's take a look at what the rest of the settings are here. First of all, we've got 3 image files, a GIF, a JPEG, and a PNG. And basically these are just going to be screenshots. It's a little bit confusing the first time you use it, but basically what's going to happen is if you click any one of those boxes, it's going to create a graphic file that's a screenshot of wherever the playhead is currently sitting when you hit the Publish button. Now, I don't need that too much for publishing my movie file, but if you need a screenshot or if you need storyboards or sometimes you need some presentation material, it's a great way to kind of pull some image out of the middle of the timeline. I'm going to leave those all off for now. Now, we'll take a closer look, though, at these two at the bottom, our projector settings. Now, a projector allows you to package up a Flash movie as a single file that's playable by your user just by double-clicking it. It doesn't need a player, it doesn't need a plugin, it doesn't even need a browser. It's a great alternative to just delivering your movies on the web. You could take a projector and burn it straight to a CD-ROM and distribute it that way. Now, notice we do have one for Windows and one for the Mac. I'm going to click on them both just so we can see what we get when we publish our files. Now, also notice over here on the side that we have names for all of these. The default names that it'll use will be the name of the Flash file with whatever extension type it's going to have at the end. If you want to have your Flash files with custom names, or if you want to put them in custom locations, you can just browse to those names and locations right over here where the folder icons show up. And just like all the rest of the publish settings, all the stuff we choose here will be saved with your FLA file so that the next time you open it up, you can just hit publish and you don't have to remember what you set. Now we've got pretty much everything set up that we want. We can click OK and these settings will be saved with our file, but we can also just click publish right here. That's going to actually create all the files we have selected with all the settings that we've chosen. And once it's done, we can click OK, and let's go see what we got. Now, in the process of publishing, it opened up this output panel someplace on your screen. Mine's up here with the timeline. If I scroll up a little bit, you can see that that's actually our text report for all the sizes of all the pieces of our file. Now, if I just pull this down a little bit so we can get a little bit better view, this is our size report that we generated. And if we scroll down here, usually at the top it starts with every frame in the movie and it tells you how big it is and how much it's adding to the movie file size. So we can track this all the way through the movie from beginning to end. You can see frames where we have more items being added and the movie kind of jumps up. Now all the way at the bottom here of this list, we should see the final Swift size. And it looks like it's about 570K for our particular movie. Now I can also see some information coming from the scene that we have set up, from some of the symbols in the file. Let me see, we can see that our content panel and our camera icon actually take up some space because they're vector images. And if we go down a little bit further, we can even see fonts. Now that's particularly interesting because Flash has a unique ability to embed font shapes. I've just used the Arial font in my file, and you can see that that's taking up about 5K of space. It even shows me which characters I've used for that font. And this ability is what actually lets you choose any font you'd like right off your system. It'll embed those font shapes in your file, and you just have to kind of take a look and see if the size is too big or not. That's a trick you can't do with HTML, though. In HTML, you're pretty much relying on your users having the fonts in order to see them. Now we can see some ActionScript taking up space here, and we can also see our bitmap graphics. Now remember, my bitmaps were all JPEGs, so it's showing me the compressed sizes. The main use of this document is if you want to make your Swift file a little bit smaller, you can actually look for the biggest items, and those would be the first things you may want to look at to make a little bit smaller, and that'll reflect the ultimate size of your completed Swift file. Usually, the biggest items are going to be our bitmaps and our sound files. Now I will point out a couple of things here. Remember, at the beginning of this chapter, we imported that tulip graphic into our library, but we didn't use it, and you'll notice it's not showing up here. Well, that's because Flash will automatically skip anything in the file that's not being used. If you left your sounds in your file, you'll see them in this list as well. I took mine out before we finished up that chapter, so once again, I'm seeing them skipped even though they're still in the library for my FLA. Let's go take a look at what else the publish process gave us. I'm just going to minimize Flash here for a moment, and we're going to go out and take a look at our files on the desktop. Now I've got my Flash website open. I'll go ahead and close my Chapter 9 folder so we won't get confused. And you can see we have a few more files in here now. I can see first of all my Flash site report. This is a text copy of the same report we were just looking at. You can just double click this and open it in any text processor, and you have a record of how big your Flash movie is, with all those details right inside of it. I'll close that up. Now if we look around, we can also see the HTML file that we created, and I can see here my Flash site application. That's my Windows projector. And since I'm working in Windows right now, my Macintosh application shows up as this Flash site app. Now on Windows this shows up as a folder, but if you're working on the Mac, it'll show up as a normal Mac application. Either way, you can grab whichever one that matches the operating system that you're currently using and just double click it. I'll double click mine, and you can see it opens my movie up. It's in its own window, and it shows an Adobe Flash Player 10 header on it. This movie doesn't need a browser, it doesn't need a plugin or anything, and if I click on all the buttons, everything should work just like it did before. We've got our video and our contact information. So let me go ahead and close that up. Now we can try our HTML document as well. I'll just go right over to it and double click it, and it should open up Explorer, or whatever browser you currently have selected. Now I do like to point this out. A lot of times when you're testing files on your local machine, you're going to see a security message like this, and you actually haven't done anything wrong. Basically, Explorer is flagging this as suspicious because we're simply running it from our hard drive. Our normal users are going to run this file from the web page itself, and it won't have the same message on it. But you can still test your movie in Explorer by right-clicking and choosing Allow Blocked Content. We'll click Yes down here for their second warning message, and then we should be able to see our movie file with the HTML set around it. Now I still want to do some formatting because you can see my HTML is pushing it up in the upper left corner, just like we talked about in the HTML settings. But if we click on some of the buttons, we'll see that this file works just like our test movie did before as well. Our video, and of course our contact page. Now let me close this on up.